I always called it the Picture Butte bubble. My students really got involved in their own community and they had their own sense of things, but they often didn't see life beyond Picture Butte, and they definitely didn't see things on a global scale. So my goal was to connect the kids outside of Picture Butte. And we used two different methods. We used traditional VC, the big Polycom systems, but we found that usually only worked within Alberta. But we used that for a couple of ways because it's nice and high quality. So what we do is we partner with other schools around Alberta to do things like science experiments. So the kids, especially with the chemistry unit in grade 5, there's so many fun experiments with that. So we would do an experiment for them and they'd have to explain it, and they would do an experiment for us, and I had arranged this all with the teacher ahead of time. So it was the students demonstrating their knowledge and being able to ask questions of other students, say in Drumheller, and then the Drumheller students doing the same thing for us. So instead of doing 2 experiments and setting up 2 big experiments to explain a topic, I'd only have to set up 1, and the teacher on the other end would only have to set up 1. So it actually kind of cut down my work. It was quite nice. We also used the VC network in Alberta to connect in with different organizations. For example, the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller. We were working with our grade 4 buddies, and they were doing some things around Alberta and paleontology. So we joined them for a video conference as they were learning about dinosaurs, and it was kind of a repeat of curriculum for them from the year before. But it's good to hear these things again. I soon found, though, that the VC network was a bit limited in trying to get my kids connected outside of Alberta specifically, because it just doesn't have the traction in other places, especially in countries where they don't have a lot of money, because these things are expensive. So I started to use Skype. I used a few other tools like Illuminate. I used Adobe Connect a little bit, depending on what the other end was using. But web conferencing was basically the idea. And that's where it really, really took off for my class. We started with a partner class in Hamilton, because grade 5 is all about Canada. So the idea was we were looking at an urban environment, and they wanted to learn about a rural environment. So these kids were in their Hamilton bubble, and my kids were in their rural Alberta bubble. And it was to learn about different parts of Canada, different urban versus rural, and just get an insight into different parts of Canada. We extended that as we learned about different regions of Canada. We met with different regions in Canada. We met with a school on Grand Manan Island in the Bay of Fundy. They had whales outside their classroom windows, which was really bizarre from an Alberta context. And that one was great because they didn't necessarily understand that our roads never ended. Because everything on an island, the roads go somewhere and they end. And my students kind of went, well, roads don't end here, they just keep going. So it's such a different island versus prairie perspective. We met with this school in Winnipeg when we looked at, we were looking at in Manitoba. We met with the school up in Iqaluit through Skype, which was incredibly cool. We met with a school in Tuktoyaktuk, which was only because a student in my class had a grandmother in Tuktoyaktuk. That was the only way we made it work. So we had made that connection. He said, hey, my cousin's in a class. And it was so funny, he communicated with his cousin over Xbox Live to set it up for us. So it was just this, sure, Riley, go for it. If you can make it work, we'll make it work. We met with the school out on Vancouver Island when we were looking at the Cordillera. So it was just a good sense of across Canada. But we wanted to expand it even more. But we found that time zones started to become an issue, especially getting outside of Canada or outside of the US. So we were, during the Olympics, we decided to stay overnight at school. And the idea was video conference with as many places as we could to get a sense of culture and sport around the world. Because it was during the Olympics. What did they think of the Olympics? What did they think of Canada? It was all part of our building Canadian identity. So we ended up Skyping with Winnipeg, Hamilton, because we always Skyped with our Hamilton class. The Hamilton teacher then went to Philadelphia, so we Skyped with her 3 hours later in a different country. They thought that was great. And then we started to chase the sun around the world, and we Skyped with Hawaii. Australia read us our bedtime story about how the kangaroo got its tail. I woke them up about 2 in the morning. They were unimpressed. To Skype with Thailand, and they didn't even know the Winter Olympics were going on, which was really interesting for my kids. How dare you not know that we're having this big event? Germany, and then in the morning, Wales and Scotland. And they thought Scotland was really neat because we had a big curling rivalry going on with Scotland. But they were more obsessed about pancakes during the Wales one, and the Wales, because we were having breakfast in a few minutes. But the first question the group from Wales has was, do you know Justin Bieber? because we were Canadian, so they assumed that we would know who Justin Bieber was. And my students thought this was great, so that one went from sport to music. We later video conferenced with a group in Arizona, and their first question was, do you know who Drake is? Do you know Drake, the music artist? Because they knew he was Canadian as well. So kids still want to talk about kid stuff no matter where they are in the world. Video conferencing allows them to do that.